So, let's talk about BJ Penn. From being considered the #1 pound-for-pound fighter and the greatest lightweight fighter of all time, to going on the longest losing streak and being forced by Dana White to retire, what went wrong?
I want BJ Penn to retire.
This is the story of BJ Penn and the saddest downfall in UFC history. BJ Penn was not your average fighter. He wasn't just tough, he was a prodigy, a natural-born champion that was destined for greatness. Growing up, he always had a fighting spirit. He'd scrap with any kid. At 17, BJ discovered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a grappling martial art, and this was a turning point. This was the shift where he went from being a regular unknown to one of the greatest BJJ practitioners of all time. Driven by his passion, BJ moved to California to train with the best. There he met Dave Camarillo, who became his close friend and mentor. BJJ became his obsession, and soon after, he moved all the way to Brazil, the heartland of this martial art. BJ was a phenomenon. He earned his black belt in Jiu-Jitsu in an unbelievably short amount of time, just 3 years. Back then, getting a black belt in 7 years was considered fast. BJ did that in half the time. Imagine that. Then came the ultimate test, the World Jiu-Jitsu Championships.
Yeah, I don't know when he started his striking out, but I know he got his black belt in jiu-jitsu in 3 years, which is
fast,
just
right?
bananas fast.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
0.1% fast.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, for most people, like getting a black belt in jiu-jitsu is like if you're a real phenom, you can get it in like 7 years.
As a phenom?
Yeah. There's a few guys that'll get it earlier, if you have some particular talent physically.
This is the biggest stage for BJJ, kind of like the Super Bowl for football. And guess what? BJ, the foreigner, shocked everyone by winning it all. He was the first non-Brazilian to ever win a black belt title at the World Championships. And this is where the legend of BJ Penn truly began. BJ Penn's arrival in the UFC was a whirlwind. Everyone who trained with him knew that he was special. His jiu-jitsu skills were mind-blowing, and the UFC just had to have him. BJ didn't waste any time. He tore through the competition, defeating fighters like Joey Gilbert, Dennis Seaver, and Matt Serra. He only lost one fight during his amazing run, a close decision to Jens Pulver. But that was just a bump in the road for the unstoppable BJ. However, his defining moment came in 2004. He challenged Matt Hughes, the reigning welterweight champion, for the title. Now, BJ was naturally a lightweight fighter, but he wasn't afraid of a challenge. Hughes was a beast and undefeated in 13 fights and considered the best in the division. Most people expected BJ to lose, but BJ defied the odds. He landed a quick jab, and then boom! He took Hughes down and wrapped him up in his incredible jiu-jitsu grip. It was like watching a boa constrictor squeeze the life out of its prey. Hughes had nowhere to go, and the ref had to step in. BJ Penn was the new welterweight champion. Penn was an ultra-competitive fighter, and part of what made him so great. After defeating Matt Hughes, BJ was on top of the world, but he craved even tougher competition. He felt like there weren't enough worthy opponents left in the UFC. So, in a move that shocked everyone, BJ signed with a Japanese fighting organization called K1. This was a huge gamble. K1 allowed kicks and knees to the head, which were banned in the UFC. It was a different style of fighting, and BJ was a smaller guy going up against some real giants. But fear wasn't in BJ's vocabulary. He fought 4 times in K1, proving his versatility. He won 3 fights, even facing opponents who outweighed him by a significant amount. He only lost once, to future UFC champion Lyoto Machida. And even in defeat, BJ showed his heart and fighting spirit. The fight was so close that some people thought BJ deserved the win. After his incredible stint in K1, BJ Penn's return to the UFC was even more highly anticipated. Everyone wanted to see the Prodigy back in the octagon. Penn himself missed the octagon, the roar of the crowd, and the challenge of mixed martial arts. He returned to the UFC a changed fighter, more well-rounded and battle-tested. His first fight back was against rising star Georges St-Pierre, but things did not go his way. Some fans even thought the judges made the wrong call, but even GSP years later acknowledged BJ's immense talent. He called BJ the most skilled martial artist I ever fought during his prime. BJ bounced back with a win over Jens Pulver, but it was his next fight that truly cemented his legacy as a UFC legend. He faced Joe Stevenson for the vacant UFC Lightweight Championship. This bloody, brutal brawl was named Beatdown of the Year by Sherdog.com. And with this victory, BJ Penn achieved something incredible. He became only the second fighter in UFC history to win titles in 2 different weight classes. He wasn't just great, he was elite. This was the stuff of legends, the kind of story that gets told for years to come. BJ didn't stop there. He defended his lightweight championship with a swagger, even predicting the finish against former champ Sean Shirk with a brutal knee strike. His confidence was infectious. He then had a rematch with Georges St-Pierre, but this time the young Canadian emerged victorious. This fight was also marred by controversy with allegations of GSP's corner using Vaseline illegally. Though BJ pursued legal action, it did not change the outcome. But despite the setback, BJ's fighting spirit remained unbroken. He went on a tear, steamrolling through Kenny Florian and Diego Sanchez, who was riding a 21-2 win streak at the time. BJ stopped Sanchez with a vicious head kick, securing the record for most consecutive lightweight title defenses.
So good. People who didn't get to see him live when he was in his prime, BJ was so good. He was so good.
Now, all this greatness and success made what come after it even more sad and shocking. Like many fighters, he faced a tough reality. Father Time is undefeated. After his record-setting title defenses, things started to go downhill. A young, hungry fighter named Frankie Edgar emerged, taking BJ's lightweight crown twice in a row. It became clear that BJ's reflexes and speed were not what they used to be. There was a flicker of hope when BJ won a trilogy fight against Matt Hughes, but it turned out to be a last hurrah. That victory would be his final one in the UFC. Over the next 9 years, BJ would embark on a heartbreaking journey. He lost 7 fights in a row, the longest losing streak in UFC history. A record that was just recently tied by another fighter who suffered a tragic downfall like this, Tony Ferguson. Now, we did cover his downfall on the channel as well, so be sure to check that one out. However, there is still little debate that Penn's downfall was the most tragic in UFC's short history, even surpassing Ferguson. It was tough to watch a legend like BJ struggle. It's like seeing your favorite athlete miss easy shots, or a race car driver unable to keep up with the pack. BJ Penn's later career became a cautionary tale. He faced a brutal reality. The fighters he once dominated were now a step ahead. Guys like Nick Diaz and Rory McDonald used their size and reach to wear him down. Even against Frankie Edgar for a third time, it was clear that the young gun had surpassed the legend. BJ just couldn't keep up with Edgar's relentless pressure. The losses kept piling up. Yair Rodriguez, Dennis Seaver, Ryan Hall. Each defeat chipped away at BJ's legacy. It became painful to watch a fighter who once danced in the octagon now struggling to land a clean punch. Some believe the UFC should have stepped in and prevented BJ from continuing to fight. The toll on his body was becoming increasingly evident, but BJ was stubborn, a fighter to the core. He craved the competition, the adrenaline rush, even if it meant enduring crushing defeats. Even after the string of losses, UFC president Dana White still offered BJ a fight with Nick Lentz. But the street brawl video became the turning point. Dana, who had always supported BJ, knew it was time to let go. What is truly sad is that the final fight we saw Penn in wasn't even a sanctioned UFC bout, but a bar brawl caught on video.
Oh my God.
Stop it, guys. Hey, come on. Punch again, punch again. Stop. Come on.
Why? Stop it. Why? Stop it.
Seeing a legend like BJ in such a situation was a stark reminder of the dangers of clinging to the past. Dana's words were clear. BJ needed to focus on his personal life. Unfortunately, the problems didn't stop there. Alcohol abuse, car crashes, legal trouble. It painted a dark picture of a legend struggling to find his place after the octagon.
Following up now on a story we told you about earlier this week, Maui police have finally released mixed martial arts fighter BJ Penn's mugshot, and here it is. Police say on Saturday night, Penn and a 37-year-old Kahului man were arguing outside a bar in Kihei. The fight turned physical. The man was hurt and taken to Maui Memorial Medical Center. He was treated and released. Penn was arrested, but was released pending further investigation.
Letting go is hard, especially for someone who has dedicated their entire life to fighting. BJ's identity was so intertwined with being a fighter that transitioning to a normal life proved incredibly challenging. It's a story that we see with many athletes, the struggle to find purpose after their playing days are over. So how should we remember BJ Penn? Should we focus on the lows of his later years or the incredible highs of his championship reign? Many believe we should celebrate his achievements and the heights that he reached.
I always tell people you have to judge a fighter by the heights they reached, not where they fell afterwards or the up-and-coming fights. You got to judge them by the heights that they reached. Got to be accurate, and then maybe he can only sustain that for a few years like Fedor could only sustain it for a few years at the tippity top of performance.
Yeah,
so you got to judge him from that.
Yeah, it makes me sick when people judge them by their worst performances. You know,
for you, your best performances were spectacular.
BJ Penn was a pioneer, a fighter who pushed the boundaries of the sport. He wasn't afraid to take on anyone, even bigger opponents. He was a champion and a true legend. Ultimately, how BJ wants to be remembered is up to him. Maybe he just wants to be a regular guy living his life in Hawaii. But for fans, there's no doubt. BJ Penn wasn't just some kid from Hilo. He was a fighter who gave everything he had, a true warrior who left his mark on the world of MMA.